All right, all right. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the next episode of Logos, Pathos, Ethos. It's good to see everyone here. I'm going to, uh, before we start talking about the conversation we're going to have this evening on this issue that we're going to discuss, excuse me, going to give people a couple extra minutes to come on in because I know there was a couple of people that was interested in this topic. And yeah, let's see what we get tonight. We have a good show tonight, hopefully. But thank you all for coming again. Thank you. Whatever it is you do, if you drink, go and get you something to drink and sit down. Let's have a conversation. If you smoke, go light you one up. Sit back, kick your feet up, make yourself comfortable. I know I am. I'm real comfortable, as a matter of fact. And yeah, so get comfortable. If you don't do any of the above, as long as it doesn't distract you too much, go ahead and engage yourself in that, indulge yourself while we're sitting here having this thought-provoking conversation this evening. So look forward to seeing you, seeing what you guys think on what we're going to discuss. Absolutely. And if you can you hear me okay? Is the volume up loud enough for you guys or anything? If you can't hear me, don't think anything of it. Just let me know and I'll adjust the microphone volume so you guys can hear me well. Yeah. We'll get started in just a few minutes. All right. All righty. So we got 3 minutes until we're gonna go ahead and jump into the subject matter. So this evening we're gonna have we're gonna have a hard conversation, and as we're going through the information that we're going to discuss, if at any given point in time the subject matter gets a little bit too intense, it starts triggering old memories. If what we're about to talk about happened to you, if anything like that happens, please by all means stop the episode. Uh, Go ahead and take yourself and comfort yourself, console yourself, get any type of support you may need, because it is not my intention to trigger any bad memories or past trauma. That is not my intention. As a matter of fact, the reason I am doing this episode on rape is because I really feel that we really don't understand rape. And I feel that the reason why we really don't understand rape is because we are approaching we're approaching this subject matter within the context of a patrilineal society that is slowly shifting. It is slowly shifting. But it is a patrilineal society. And because it is that way, I think when it comes to discussing the feminine or anything that has to do with motherhood or female empowerment, only within the last, I would dare say, maybe 15 years has the Me Too movement really taken off and saw that justice was done in the situations where it was applied. And I applaud the Me Too movement because it put all guys on notice. We tend to downplay or kind of not really give it too much weight or credibility whenever we discuss rape, because again, we think that it's something that only affects women. Does it? Does rape only affect women? Can a woman, and only a woman, a female, be raped? Or can men get raped? And if they are raped, how does that happen? Why haven't we heard too much about it? So tonight, what we're going to do is we're going to do a couple of things. We're going to discuss, first off, why is this important? Let's discuss why are we talking about rape tonight? And then after we understand why we're talking about it, we're going to approach this issue of rape from a multiple set of ways of orienting our ways of looking at this subject matter. Meaning, if you were a person that really, really enjoyed mathematics, then you can understand rape because we're gonna talk about the statistics of it. If you're a person that really, you like history and you feel that everything that is going on now is the result of what happened in the past, then we are going to talk about, some of the historical relevance of rape and the historical antecedents in terms of how is this looked upon in the ancient world. Sometimes we like to look back in the past to find out exactly where we are now, and we're going to do that a little bit, not too much though. And then, of course, we're going to have to establish some definitions. We're going to have to look at certain words, and we're going to have to make sure we understand what these words mean. What are their definitions? How are they applied? Because after all, if we're going to talk about rape, we have to at least have some kind of common ground. So after we cover that, then only then after actually understanding what we're talking about, which is rape, then we're going to talk about the problem. And that is going to be very important to understand and discuss, because once we start talking about the problem, there's something that I'm going to conclude this talk with, and it's going to be more of a qualitative approach, if you will, towards understanding rape. So let's just jump right into it. Why is this topic important? I'm going to just tell you a little bit about myself. Having previously worked within counseling, psychosocial rehabilitation, committed my life to a large amount of my life to understanding psychology, trying to understand the human mind. I found some correlations, and in while I was working with my members, my patients, when I was in therapy, we were going through therapy, and I kept finding some similar recurring things popping up in these therapeutic sessions with my patients. And I primarily worked with schizophrenic, schizoaffective, bipolar disorder, and major depressive disorders. Those were the main four that I primarily worked with for 13 years straight of my life. And as I began to speak with different patients and hear their stories, I started noticing that in certain diagnoses, specifically major depression or bipolar disorders, I found that as I began talking with my patients more and more, and they would become more and more comfortable with me, at some point in time, out of my members with bipolar and major depression, sometimes schizophrenia and schizoaffective diagnoses, sometimes with those, sometimes, but primarily when I worked with my members that had bipolar disorder or major depression, at some point in time, early childhood sexual trauma came up. At some point. Specifically, when I worked with patients that were cutters, meaning they would take a knife or something sharp and cut themselves on their arms, their legs, their face, wherever the case may be. Excuse me. Most of my patients that suffered from cutting, almost all of them had suffered some form of early childhood trauma, sexual trauma, or rape when they got older. And when I say rape when they were older, I'm talking between the ages of sometime as early as 13, 14. Some members were raped as early as 5 or 6. When you put them under hypnosis, you can get that information, you can get that out of them, especially people with bipolar disorder diagnoses. And also some of our members, they were fine. They were well acclimated to society, no issues at all. And they got raped and something changed. And I kept noticing this recurring theme, specifically in mental health, rape. I think we focus too much more on co-occurring substance abuses, where if a person has a addiction of some sort, that the addiction caused the mental illness, or did the mental illness cause the addiction? We kind of don't really know at this point. Was which one came first, the chicken or the egg kind of analogy. And we put a lot of emphasis on that. But the elephant in the room that we don't really speak about is trauma, specifically when that trauma was rape. We kind of treat it as taboo. We address it, but nowhere near to the degree of as if we were discussing with someone that had a addiction of some sort, if they had a drinking problem of some sort. On another level, I found rape to be an interesting subject to talk about, is because at all of us, every individual that is watching this right now, you have a mother or you had a mother. Whether or not you were close to her or not is not what I'm talking about. Whether or not she raised you and y'all were best friends, or whether or not she abandoned you or what have you, it's not what I'm talking about. You had a mother. You had an aunt. Okay. Maybe an aunt. Maybe a sister. Maybe a daughter. Maybe a wife. Maybe you. You know someone that has been raped. I have about 3 people that I know that have confided in me and expressed to me their experience with rape. And I have to be honest, had I even been looking for whether or not there was some type of rape or trauma in their life or whatever, which I wasn't looking, because I really don't like to play psychologist or therapist or counselor or clinician, whatever you want to call it. I really don't like doing that. But sometimes if it's something glaring and it gets my attention, I'm like, okay, something's going on. But otherwise, I'm not paying attention. So you may think, how did Ron not pick up on it? Because I'm not paying attention. Even though I'm trained in, I'm not paying attention. So I had no idea that they had suffered such an atrocity. And not knowing that they suffered such an atrocity, that means that if they didn't get counseling, therapy, some type of help, pastoral counseling, support from the community, their family, if they didn't get help like that, then they buried those feelings deep inside. And it started affecting other parts of their lives. And it's not until you can no longer manage your life anymore because of the trauma that occurred to you that now you have to get help. That's the danger of not being able to talk about the subject that we're discussing, which is rape. Because all too often, the victim feels like, what did I do to cause this? What did I do to deserve this? Will this ever happen to me again? These are questions that they ask themselves almost on a daily basis. Can I go out on a date with this man? Because the last man that I went out on a date with raped me, sexually abused me, assaulted me. So now I have to put up these protective barriers that almost makes me borderline paranoid. Makes me look like I'm borderline paranoid. What are you going to do then? Live your life behind bars, keeping everyone else out, but you're locked in. That's why I want to have this conversation, because I feel like we should be able to have this conversation with no restrictions, no judgments, but full transparency insofar as safe as we feel to be. A learning environment, an experience to understand someone else's story or viewpoint. I can honestly tell you that, thanks be to God, I have never, ever, ever been raped. Ever. And I thank God that I have never been raped, nor have I ever raped anyone. And one of the things that I want us to start off with is, let's look at some numbers regarding rape. Let's look at some statistics. 1 in 5 women before the age of 13 would have been raped and or sexually assaulted. 1 in 71 men at some point in time in their life, during their lives, they will have been raped. Okay. Now, we're about to look at some numbers. We're about to get a little bit deep. So I really want you to stick with me because I'm not trying to bore you. I'm making a point. 91% victims of rape and or sexual assault are women. 9% are men. Let me say that again. 91% of the victims of rape are women. 9% are men. We've already established the fact that 1 out of every 5 women in the United States of America prior to the age of 13 will have been raped or sexually assaulted. Over the course of a man's lifetime in the United States, 1 out of every 71 men would have been raped. All right, so we got those numbers. Now, here's the part where it gets crazy. 96% of the people who are 96% of the people who sexually abuse children are men. Now, let's stop for a minute. Let's make sure we really understand these numbers that we're talking about. I'm sorry, excuse me 1 second. Someone is trying to get into the room. Okay. Let's make sure we understand these numbers. 1 in 5 women by the age of 13 would have been raped. And usually they've been raped by someone that's close to them or close to the family. Okay. That means 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 raped. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you've been raped. You find 5 more women. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you've been raped. Meaning 1 in every 5 women has been raped or sexually abused. Now, interesting enough, I want us to interpret these numbers. These numbers, in terms of 1 in 5 women, that number may actually be closer to 1 in 3 women. Simply because you have to give an account, they may be underreporting because there's so much guilt that comes along with having been raped. There's so much guilt. There's so much embarrassment. There's so much shame if they survived it. But 1 in 5 women have been raped in America before age 13, but the number may be 1 in 3. But then there's a staggering difference between men getting raped. 1 in 71 men over the course of their lives would have been raped in America. So the question becomes, what are we to take of this, of those numbers? Now, interesting enough, there's minimal evidence studied on the issue of men on men rape, which you commonly hear about, the horror stories in prison. And by the way, prison itself, prison as an institution in the United States of America has single-handedly and foremost been most responsible for not only men on men rape, but also the act of some homosexuality amongst men in the penal system, no pun intended, but in that system. Okay. But because whenever a man gets raped by another man, according to what this information is saying and what the research has shown, they underreport it because we're supposed to see men as fully, strong, capable, very can handle themselves, can defend themselves. They're supposed to be a protector. And if you get raped, that's something that we would be embarrassed about had it happened to us. And there are plenty of there are plenty of situations where either of someone that has gone to prison and they've heard stories where multiple people may jump one guy, or one guy may get beat up by another guy and get raped or what have you. You hear about those situations all the time. But in terms of the amount of rape that occurs across the sexes, even though that happens to men on men rape, and those numbers I'm sure are severely underreported, and I'm sure that it happens a lot. But because the numbers are so staggering in terms of women that are victims of rape and or sexual violence, that the men on men rape is not even hardly considered. That's how small that number is in comparison, regardless of how big the number may be. That is how small that number is in comparison to women that are victims of rape. Now, interesting enough, as small as that number is, men on men rape, you have another category that we're not talking about. Remember when I asked you earlier, can men get raped, or is it only women? There's also another category. Women who rape men. And we do not know what the statistics or the numbers are conclusively because of not only it being underreported when a man is raped by a woman, but also we do not know what those numbers are because we're still trying to argue if a woman can rape a man. Because if a woman can rape a man, then you have to approach rape with concern unilaterally. You have to say, bilaterally. Because you have to then say, hey, rape is something that can occur to men and it can occur to women. Rape is something that can be conducted by men and it can be conducted by women. Now, we understand it can be conducted by men, but we're still out in terms of the jury's still out in terms of if a woman can rape a man, which leads us to having to understand or at least have some working definitions in place. Because let's look at it. Let's answer the question first. What is rape? And after we answer the definition of rape, we've determined the definition of rape. From that point, Then from there, let's go to, okay, can a man get raped? All right. And then after we discuss if a man can get raped, then let's discuss, can a woman commit rape against a man, or can a woman commit rape against another woman? Let's discuss it. First things first, definitions. Rape is defined as unlawful sexual activity, usually sexual intercourse carried out forcefully. It's also defined as an outrageous violation. In ancient Greece, they used to use a term in ancient Greek that was, its equivalent is to what we would call rape. And when they used the term rape, they used the term as carrying a person away forcefully or to seize. I'll say it again. In ancient Greece, rape was not understood as someone being taken advantage of sexually. When you raped someone, it would be similar to if you kidnapped someone. It would be similar to if you held someone hostage. When you rape something or someone, it says you're carrying a person away forcefully, like kidnapping them against their will, or to seize, like I'm holding this and I seize this. I think the ancient Greeks, in terms of how they understood rape and the way that they applied it, is 100% applicable to how we understand rape. I think the problem is, and this is where I have to stand up for my women. Is I'm on your side, women. I'm on all your side. Rape is something that traditionally occurred to women and now has been applied to be able to occur to men. And rape also, thank you so much for joining. And rape also is taking on a different, or has taken on rather, a different connotation. And let me show you what I mean by that. When I say little Johnny was raped by his grandfather when he was 5 years old, what image comes to mind? Okay, now I want you to keep that image in your head. Now, if I say, my 5-year-old daughter was raped by her uncle, what image popped in your head? All right. Now, I want you to compare both images. Here, a little girl at 5 years old was raped by an adult. And here, a 5-year-old boy was raped by an adult, by his uncle. Whenever you start thinking of rape, when you thought about the image of the little boy being raped, you more often than not thought about him being fondled, maybe penetrated, but mostly fondled, engaging probably in oral intercourse, those kinds of things. Let's just be honest with each other. I understand we're all different, and some of us are special and we think differently. I understand all of that. And I understand you're the exception to the rule. But for the rest of us here on planet Earth, when we think of a little boy getting raped, we think of maybe anal penetration, but mostly fondling. But when we think about a little girl who got raped, when we see it on the news, rapist, adult raped 12-year-old girl, then killed her, we're automatically thinking penetration, intercourse. You're not even thinking fondling like you're thinking with the little boy, because there are some basic assumptions that we're operating off of, but we're not saying. And the basic assumption is women or girls get raped. Boys can't get raped. They can get penetrated, but not raped like a girl. That's what you're thinking. That's what you're thinking. All right. Now let's look at that. Today, rape can be considered a sexual assault, but a sexual assault does not have to be rape. That's very important to understand. I'll say it again. You can rape someone, and you have to excuse me, my allergies are really bothering me. You can rape someone, and that is a sexual assault. But a sexual assault does not have to necessarily be defined or involve rape. Rape is the unlawful sexual activity, usually sexual intercourse carried out forcefully. Now, I'm going to say something that's going to probably upset a lot of you. In my humble opinion, I don't believe that a man can be raped by a woman. He may be sexually assaulted. Excuse me again, I apologize. My allergies are bothering me so bad tonight. I am so sorry. Excuse me, I'm so sorry. My allergies are really bothering me. So, in order for a woman to rape a man, she would have to penetrate him in the same fashion that when a man rapes a woman, he penetrates her. If a woman is to penetrate a man, she has to go in through his rectum if she is to rape him in the traditional sense. She would have to penetrate him with her finger or with anything else she could stick up inside of him if she's going to try to rape him in the traditional sense of how we understand rape. Traditional sense being how men rape women. Okay? If a woman does that, it is not considered rape. Well, let me say this. It's considered rape legally. Because what they found is when a woman does that to a man, then since she cannot enter him forcefully with her own body, let's say like with her sexual organs, which is how a man usually attempts to rape a woman, by forcefully taking her organs, her sexual, organ from her autonomy, her independence, her uses, her decision making, her freedom. He can take that sexual organ away from her by the use of his organ, his own sexual organ. A woman cannot make that claim about a man. What she can do is she can sexually abuse him with her finger or any tool or whatever you want to, however you want to label it. The reason I'm making that distinction is because notice, if you look at how we think about children being sexually assaulted versus rape, we usually think of boys, little boys, or men in terms of sexual assault. Insofar as a woman committing rape against them, we only think about rape when it comes to men insofar as another man has penetrated them. Now, when that happens, that is rape. When a woman attempts it, she does not have the hardware to commit the act. It's an impossibility. But that is still considered rape. Now, if you think that should be considered rape, fine. If you think it should be just considered only sexual assault, fine. However you want. I personally think it should be considered only sexual assault. And I'm going to make my argument why. Because the Greek said it was a carrying of a person away forcefully or to seize. A woman cannot forcefully rape a man. She may be able to render him helpless and abuse him, but not rape. Because it involves her body. She cannot replicate the experience that if she was raped by a man, she cannot replicate that experience to that degree of intensity. She cannot forcefully act that out if she had an opportunity to get revenge on her assailant. A man can enter a woman multiple ways, and either way is still considered rape. Even if she is a unwilling participant, even if she, excuse me, even if she does not want to be a part of this, she attempts to forcefully defend herself. There is nothing she can do to stop this act from occurring if a man has rendered her helpless or just held her arms down and abused her sexual organ with his own. There is nothing she can do about it. All he has to do is just, move her legs apart render her where she can't fight against him, and there's nothing she can do. Even if she doesn't get turned on, which I'm sure she wouldn't be turned on, she doesn't get turned on. She's scared for her life. She's getting taken advantage of, and all he has to do is get stimulated and enter. She is totally at the will, at the hands, at the mercy of this animal. All right. That's rape. Now let's reverse it. A woman cannot rape a man because of one thing. He has to, on some level, become a willing participant. The female does not want to be a willing participant when a man is raping her, but there's nothing that she can do to stop him from abusing her with his sexual organ against her sexual organ. Nothing. But when it's reversed, a woman cannot violate a male's sexual organ with her own unless he gets aroused. It's now, believe it or not, ladies, they say some of us are horn dogs. We get horny after, you can just blow air on us. Excuse me 1 second. I do apologize. I have to stop the feed for 1 second. So sorry. Okay, thank you so much. I'm so sorry I have to stop 1 second. Just fast forward it straight through as you're watching the replay. But anyway, so yes, she cannot take advantage of him. He has to become a willing participant, meaning he has to become aroused in order for her to insert him into her and to finish the job, consummate the violation, if you will. If you think I'm lying when I say that, then notice, I believe it's in Colorado, I'm not sure, but there are a couple of states in the United States where if a woman sexually assaults a man or rapes a man, as they classify it, notice how even when she gets pregnant by the male, she still retains parental rights to the child that she's pregnant with now. And the father has to pay child support. There was a situation where it was pretty bad for some time, where teachers were raping the students, having inappropriate, sexual relations with the students, and the male students, and the teachers were female. And there was a couple of situations where the teachers got pregnant and they went to jail for 10 years. And when they had the baby in prison, the baby came out. The family, the father's family, he's 13 years old. They're not taking care of a kid and another kid, which is his kid. So usually another family member on the other side of belonging to the woman, that one of their family members will raise the kid, or the child gets put into foster care. But when she got out of prison, she got her kid back. And guess what happened? When that 13-year-old was able to start working, he had to pay child support. Back child support at that, come to think about it, not I remember. And she still retained parental rights to that child. That is, in other words, That's a very subtle way the courts are saying, even though you didn't want to do this, sir, you are still complicit. I'm not saying that. I'm only saying if you're going to interpret the law and how they are applying these terms rape, and insofar as how it affects, well, if there's a child involved, a pregnancy involved, and you can't terminate them now. But when that's involved, it look at how women still retain, they have certain rights that the male doesn't in the event that there's a pregnancy, you know, because of an inappropriate sexual relationship. Now, we've covered we've covered you know I'm oh goodness, I'm sorry, I'm getting calls. We've covered a couple of things like, can a woman rape a man? Can a man, children, they're raped usually by men, 96%. We've talked about that. And one last point regarding a woman raping a man. Before I get all of this hate mail or hate text or hate messages, I want you to understand something. Please do not get upset on what I'm saying right now, because I recognize that rape, as it is determined by law, it includes sexual assault or behaviors of sexual assault. That's why Trump had to pay $86 million to the woman up in New York that said that he fondled her or inappropriately touched her, and it still came up, it was tried as rape. So I understand that. The reason why I've been breaking down the definitions of the terms of what we're talking about, rape being originally sexual intercourse, versus now rape can be just fondling or finger or inserting your finger or whatever the case may be. Heck, even inappropriate kissing, you know what I mean? Because now that is considered rape. I understand that rape takes on a different connotation. However, my personal belief is it is because of those connotations, those different aspects of sexual assault that we add to being considered rape, takes away from the power, the violence of what rape really is. Because what you start doing is you start setting equivalency standards. You start saying like, hey man, so yeah, he entered that little girl, but he fondled that little boy. And somehow the two of those are supposed to be the same or treated equally. Well, I would have to argue to say this. In our society, a little boy can get sexually assaulted by, let's say, a 20-year-old female. When that little boy gets older, he's not going to need therapy. He's not going to need therapy. When he starts talking to his friends about, man, this 20-something-year-old little girl, 20-something-year-old girl, when I was only 9 years old, she, played with my wee, did this or whatever. They be like, oh man, we applaud. We're like, oh man, you got started early. Good for you. That's what I'm talking about, boy. You own it. But if a 9-year-old little girl, same thing happens, or God forbid, is raped by some 21-year-old guy, give him the electric chair, cut his head off, hands, feet, everything. And it usually even affects the girl differently. She starts harboring those feelings. And not to say that some boys don't, as little boys. I'm only saying in this society, in general, that is how it plays out. I am not giving you any theories. I'm not giving you anything that I read out of book. I'm telling you what I've seen and experienced in my own life amongst other men my age that grew up alongside me. We've had similar experiences. And at no point in time did any man that I knew that was sexually molested, assaulted by any older woman when we were kids, at no point in time did I ever hear them complain. At no point in time did I ever see them have to go get on meds. At no point in time did I ever hear them having to go get therapy. At no point in time did I ever hear them having to have a come to, to come to Jesus moment with their parents and tell their parents about how they were sexually molested by Aunt Susie at that, well, not I wouldn't say aunt, but a female that was older. Because our society reinforces to us to be able to interpret those cues differently. We don't deal with the shame a little girl does. We deal with we have a badge of honor. But it's the same act, right? See, that's exactly why I question. Not only because of the cultural reinforcement, but because the act itself is different insofar as it pertains to little boys versus little girls when the opposite sex is involved. Now, I'm not going to beat that up any further. That's beating a dead horse. But let's look at it also this way. We just said 96% of all children that were molested or raped, rather, as kids were victims at the hands of a man. Isn't it interesting that most of the rapes, whether underreported, overreported, whatever, isn't it interesting that most of the victims are women and children? And most of the assailants, 92%, 91% of the perpetrators are men. Now we have to ask ourselves, what is that about? And to be honest with you, there are plenty of theories. There's one that says, hey, look, it's an evolutionary thing, like bats and dolphins commit rape. Matter of fact, dolphins commit rape in groups. Bats commit rape. And the reason they do it in the animal kingdom is because they're trying to pass their genes on. And they haven't been able to find a suitor that is willing to take them. They've been rejected. And so because they've been rejected from the group, they'll forcefully take a member of that group and insert himself into that female member and get her pregnant so that his progeny continues and his bloodline continues. Because otherwise he would die off. And that would be the end of him and his bloodline. Another reason that they believe we commit rape is because it's a dominance thing. And you'll often see rape play out behind closed doors in the bedroom. And it's rape, but it's safe rape. It's in a controlled environment. And that's why a lot of us, when we're in the bedrooms and have those kinds of role-playing scenarios, we are able to give ourselves over, because even though we're engaging in, let's say, some rough sex or good sex, whatever you want to call it, we know it's in a controlled environment. In other words, hey man, it's all an act. It's all a play. And that provides them a sense of safety, a safety you don't have when you're raped. Notice how whenever you're raped, 91% of men, for women, that rape women, 90%, 96% of men, 96% of this perpetrators of rape against children are men. Notice also how you're still dealing with men. We got a problem. It's too disproportionate. If you know the answer to that question, please, by all means, let me know what it is, because I've heard some people even say perhaps because it's connected to our testosterone. But then if that's the case, then we shouldn't see any cases of women, committing those acts against men, or attempting to commit it against men, or against children. But primarily it's men against women. Now I want to talk about something that is, I think, the highlight of this talk. We've discussed the history of rape, the definitions of it, the legalities of it, the statistics. But I want to talk about the qualitative aspect of it. This is the part that I've been trying to get to all night. And this is about to be a rough go. So again, if you have been raped, I do apologize. And I'm going to, for those of us that have no frame of reference, I'm going to use a lot of imagery in hopes that you understand, you'll be able to have a working framework of what women primarily have to deal with. So here you are, a female. There's a man that wants to take advantage of you, wants to rape you. What is that like? He usually stalks you. After he stalked you, he probably, more than likely, physically assaults you. So he beats you up physically to the point where you can no longer defend yourself. And we're talking most situations. I'm sure there are some very capable women out there. Matter of fact, just watch any UFC event, and you'll see some women that are, I don't think they would have any problems. I'll say that. I wish all women could fight that good, to be honest with you. I'd make it a law. But you have a woman that's been rendered helpless because she's been just overwhelmed physically by this man who's assaulting her physically, beating her up really bad. And the torment doesn't stop there. After he does that, then he takes your clothes off and rapes you. And God forbid, in some instances, woman would end up with some kind of disease, or you may end up with a baby, God forbid, And afterwards, a woman is left with more questions than answers. She is trying to figure out, what did I do to deserve this? And it is at this point where rape stands out above and beyond, light years ahead of most crimes against humanity. Rape is peculiar because it destroys you on the outside because you've been destroyed on the inside. You've already undergone physical trauma. Your eyes are blackened, barely see. You're probably bleeding if something isn't broken on you. So physically, you're hurt. And this animal inserts himself into a woman forcefully against her will, such that when she is trying to process what has happened to her, she has to heal physically, emotionally, physically, spiritually. And usually, whenever we experience pain, we will, if we have a physical pain, we will retreat internally. And that's where they say mind over matter, and you're able to not be affected by pain. But when you have been raped, the problem is you can't even go inside now, because that's exactly where he was. You can't go outside yourself because you can barely stand and look at the picture, the face in the mirror, because you just see that person all over you. You don't even see you anymore. You see your assailant. So you can't deal with it physically. You can't retreat inside because that's where you've been violated. You now have a situation where you become confused on the deepest of levels about yourself. You have nowhere to run to. You can't keep it all in. You sure can't let it all out. You can't not tell, you can't tell anyone. You can't not tell anyone. Rape is one of the most egregious acts ever committed against humanity. And I would argue at 91% of women that experience rape and the 96% of children that experience rape at the hands of men, all I can say to that is, men, we got work to do. Those are our daughters, our mothers, and our sisters. Have a good evening. Thank you for watching.